In the center of the great Luo heaven, a towering mountain peak loomed high, resembling a sword that pierced the clouds, making for a truly awe-inspiring sight. This peak, known as Great Luo Peak, was the most important place in all of the Great Luo heaven. Not only did the three sovereigns control the entire Great Luo heaven domain from here, but it was also said that even the elusive domain lord, who was rarely seen, secluded himself in meditation within this mountain. This was considered the very heart of the Great Luo heaven, and even the entire Great Luo heaven domain. Today, however, the Great Luo Peak was especially lively. The sound of rushing wind echoed through the sky as flashes of light darted from the distance, eventually landing on the towering peak. Today marked the biannual Nine Kings Assembly in the Great Luo Heaven Domain, one of the most significant meetings in the region. It was rare for anyone to be absent. At the summit of the Great Luo Peak stood a magnificent hall, radiating an ancient aura as if it had been preserved since the ancient times, evoking a deep sense of reverence. In front of the hall was a staircase that stretched thousands of steps, and all the light and shadow settled below it, as no one dared to fly directly to the top, but instead chose to ascend the grand staircase with respect. At this moment, many figures had already gathered before the staircase, though they stood in separate groups, clearly defined in their divisions. Wherever people gathered, there would inevitably be conflict. This rule had not changed within the vast Great Luo Heaven domain. Different factions fought for their own interests, and their enmities were deeply complicated. Whoosh! As figures flickered on the vast platform, several streaks of light suddenly appeared from the horizon, finally landing on the platform. All eyes turned in that direction, and when the figures were seen clearly, expressions of surprise appeared in their eyes, followed by quiet whispers spreading through the crowd. Is that the Nine Nether King? She really has returned. I received word just yesterday, and it seems true. The Nine Nether King has been gone for many years. It's said she went to undergo tribulation. Judging by her appearance, it seems she succeeded. Impressive. To be able to pass the tribulation at her age and transcend to a higher spiritual realm. Looks like today's Nine Kings Assembly will be interesting. Over the years, the Nine Nether Palace has been severely suppressed by the Blood Eagle King and his allies. With the Nine Nether King's temperament, she surely won't let this go easily. Before, the Nine Nether King failed her tribulation, and though she had the Heavenly Vulture Emperor backing her, she was never a real threat. But now that she's returned having succeeded, things will not be so easily resolved. Whispers spread across the vast platform. As for the murmurs around her, the Nine Nether King seemed oblivious. She raised her elegant face and gazed at the ancient hall atop the 1,000-step staircase, her narrow eyes narrowing slightly in contemplation. Mu Chun and the Tang sisters, Tang Bing and Tang Ro, stood behind the Nine Nether King, eyes forward without a glance to the side. Not long after the Nine Nether King appeared, another series of wind-breaking sounds echoed from the horizon. Several more flashes of light appeared and landed on the platform. With their arrival, a heavy spiritual pressure began to emanate from the figures, clearly belonging to powerful individuals. Mu Chen's gaze swept over, noting that the arrivals were grouped into roughly 3 factions. The first group to arrive was led by a middle-aged man with an emotionless expression. He wore a black robe, and his eyes glowed a dark red, sending an eerie chill through the air. Behind him was a younger man, tall and upright, dressed in a green robe, with sharp eyebrows that made him look quite handsome. Spiritual energy seemed to ripple around him, and his expression was calm, until his gaze fell upon the long, slender figure of the Nine Nether King. At that moment, a flicker of light and surprise flashed in his eyes. That's the Xun'er King, the strongest of the 9 kings. Given time, he might even be able to enter the ranks of the 3 sovereigns, Tang Bing whispered as she noticed the 2 figures. Mu Chen nodded slightly, his expression serious. The Xun'er King seemed even more formidable and unfathomable than the black-robed elder who followed Lu Ming. And the man behind the Xun'er King is Su Qing, the leader of the 4 great commanders. His strength is remarkable. Mu Chen's gaze shifted slightly as he turned toward the young man in the green robe. However, the latter's attention was entirely fixed on Nine Nether, his eyes deeply focused. It seemed that, as Tang Ro had said before, This Su Qing harbored certain feelings toward Nine Nether. Despite his intense gaze, Nine Nether showed no reaction, merely glancing at the Xun'er king when she saw him. She lightly nodded her head in acknowledgement. Although the Xun'er king was notoriously hard to approach within the great Luo heaven domain, Nine Nether seemed to think that this Xun'er king was far more agreeable than the treacherous Blood Eagle king. The Xun'er king also noticed Nine Nether. His face, usually expressionless, shifted slightly as he returned her nod. In the past, Nine Nether had been nothing more than a little girl in his eyes, but her return now made him feel a hint of pressure. Clearly, her strength had increased significantly over the years. The young man in the green robe behind the Xun'er king saw that Nine Nether didn't even spare him a glance. He could only smile bitterly, but the spark in his eyes grew brighter, as though he had found new motivation. Chen turned his attention elsewhere and looked toward the second group of people approaching. The leader was a middle-aged man with an extremely muscular build. His hands were large, with veins bulging like coiled dragons, as if they could cleave mountains in two. That's the mountain-splitting king, one of the formidable figures among the 9 kings, Tang Bing said lightly. Chen nodded slightly, but his eyes soon shifted again. He had noticed another man standing behind the mountain-splitting king, who was similarly broad and muscular, casting his roaming gaze around. But his focus was clearly not on Chen. It was on Tang Bing, who stood next to him, her delicate face cold. That guy is Zhou Yu, the second ranked of the 4 great commanders. It seems he has some interest in my sister. He used to sneak into Nine Nether Palace just to watch her. She caught him once and chased him out with a sword, Tang Ro whispered with a sly smile. Seems your sister really does have quite the charm, Chen remarked with mild amusement. It was clear that Zhou Yu harbored some feelings for Tang Bing, though judging by her expression, she seemed to have no interest in him. Tang Bing raised an eyebrow and glared at Chen, but he just flashed a smile. She turned away in frustration, realizing that no matter how hard she glared at him, Chen would never feel guilty. Haha, isn't this Nine Nether? I didn't expect you to actually return. How delightful. A cheerful but eerily cold voice suddenly rang out as a group of people charged forward. Many eyes in the area turned to them. At the front of this group was a middle-aged man with blood-red hair. His eyes were sharp and cold, like a hawk watching its prey, always ready to strike with lethal force. He was smiling broadly at Nine Nether, and his blood-red hair swayed with an ominous aura, as though it carried a scent of blood. This time, Chen didn't need Tang Bing's introduction. He instantly recognized the newcomer as the Blood Eagle King, who was clearly at odds with Nine Nether. Beside Tang Bing and Tang Ro, both women glared angrily at the Blood Eagle King. Behind him stood a man in white robes, handsome in appearance, though his expression was stiff and uneasy, his eyes flickering nervously, unwilling to look at Nine Nether ahead. Seeing this, Chen immediately understood. This man was likely Chao Feng, the one who had defected from Nine Nether Palace. There was another man beside Chao Feng, grinning as he gazed at the fiery-eyed sisters, his gaze full of lascivious intent. He lightly licked his lips, as if he were about to devour the 2 sisters whole. This man was most likely Wu Tian, the 3rd ranked of the 4 great commanders. Nine Nether paid no attention to the Blood Eagle King. Her beautiful eyes swept past him to land on Chao Feng, standing behind him. Her expression remained calm. Chao Feng, isn't this your former master? Aren't you going to greet him? Otherwise, you'll seem rude, the Blood Eagle King said with a casual smile, fingers intertwined. Chao Feng finally looked up, forcing a stiff smile. The Nine Nether glanced at him, and her beautiful eyes gradually calmed down, with not much disappointment showing. Though she had felt some sorrow when she first heard the news yesterday, now, upon seeing him again, the sense of unfamiliarity was as if he were a stranger. There was only some regret. The young man she had once saved from the battlefield had gradually changed. It seemed that not everyone could walk the path to becoming a strong warrior. Unlike the boy beside her, who always wore a gentle smile, but whose core was filled with stubborn determination, maintaining his true heart. Chao Feng looked at the Nine Nether's gradually calming eyes, feeling the unfamiliarity in her gaze. His hand, hidden in his sleeve, suddenly clenched tightly. He lowered his head slightly, his face twisting with a shadow of darkness. He hated how calmly Nine Nether expressed her betrayal of him. Nine Nether withdrew her gaze and finally looked at the Blood Eagle King. Her eyes were filled with coldness and frost. She then turned and walked directly toward the Grand Hall, her icy voice lowering the temperature of the surrounding air. Blood Eagle, everything you've taken from Nine Nether Palace, you'd better be ready to return it. As Nine Nether departed, the atmosphere around the stone platform remained tense, with many people exchanging glances. It seemed that this Nine Kings assembly was bound to be a turbulent one. I didn't expect you to have such a temper after leaving for a few years. The Blood Eagle King squinted his eyes and watched Nine Nether's graceful figure disappearing into the distance. A trace of hostility flashed in his eyes, and then he smiled faintly. But I want to see who can take back what I've already consumed. The Blood Eagle King smiled sinisterly, not taking Nine Nether's threat to heart. Although he knew she had the Heavenly Vulture King behind her, he wasn't afraid. After all, the Heavenly Vulture King was just one of the three sovereigns and couldn't control everything in the great Luo Heaven domain by himself. Let's go. The Blood Eagle King waved his hand and stepped onto the towering stone stairs, quickly ascending. The Xun'er King, Mountain Splitter King, and the others merely watched coldly without intervening in the feud between the two. Nine Nether had always been weak among the Nine Kings, with few allies, while the Blood Eagle King had considerable prestige. In past encounters, it was always the Blood Eagle King who had the upper hand. But who knew what the result would be this time? Behind the Xun'er King, Chen glanced at the Blood Eagle King's retreating back, his brow furrowing slightly. If you're incapable, don't think about standing up for a woman. Right now, you're not in the position to do so, the Xun'er King, seemingly aware of Chen's gaze, said lightly. Chen, hearing this, couldn't help but smile awkwardly. Besides, you need not worry about Nine Nether's strength now. She's probably already nearing the 5th grade Supreme stage. With her divine beast physique, even the 5th grade Supreme Blood Eagle King won't be able to do anything to her. The Xun'er King stepped forward, his indifferent voice reaching Chen's ear. Moreover, you should know that Nine Nether is not like those ordinary women. She's cold and proud. To make her fall for you, you're still far from capable. At the very least, you need to rid yourself of that commander identity. Chen nodded silently and followed behind the Xun'er King toward the Grand Hall. The remaining kings also began climbing the stone stairs. As they ascended the stairs, the ancient Grand Hall opened, and Nine Nether, accompanied by Chen and the others, stepped inside. Inside the hall, there was an oval-shaped stone platform, which grew taller the deeper one went. The stone platform extended along the edges of the hall, leaving the center open. At the highest point of the platform was a tall throne that overlooked everyone. However, there was no one sitting on it. Even so, it exuded an invisible sense of oppression, as if the entire hall were under its influence. Clearly, that throne belonged to the true ruler of the great Luo Heaven domain, the elusive Domain Lord. Beneath the throne were 3 golden lotus platforms. On them sat 3 figures, each emitting a faint halo. Their presence caused the surrounding space to twist. Of the 3 figures, the one in the center was a frail old man. To the left of him was another elderly figure, his hair as white as snow. However, his skin was smooth like that of an infant, and his face was completely free of wrinkles. Even his white hair emitted a glossy sheen, completely unlike that of a frail old man. His eyes, however, were entirely black, with no trace of sclera, an abyssal darkness that sent a chill down one's spine. On his right side sat a man who appeared to be drowsy, his age indeterminate, yet his lazy posture suggested he was perpetually in a state of half-sleep. Upon entering the Grand Hall, Nine Nether's gaze was drawn first to the withered old man in the center. A smile finally appeared on her cold, beautiful face. Ah, little Nine Nether is finally back. How wonderful, the withered old man said, his sharp gaze settling on Nine Nether, his tone warm and pleased. The elderly man with skin as smooth as a child's narrowed his eyes, casting a surprised glance at Nine Nether. The drowsy man also opened one eye, glanced at her, then lazily tilted his head again. The one in the center is Lord Heavenly Vulture. Tang Bing whispered to Chen. He has some connections with the Nine Nether Sparrow clan, so he is considered an elder to Nine Nether and has always looked after her. And the one to his left is the Spirit Pupil Emperor. He is also a backing for the Blood Hawk King and others. The reason Blood Hawk King can be so arrogant is largely because of the support from the Spirit Pupil Emperor, Tang Bing continued. Mu Chen's mind stirred as he looked at the elderly man with black eyes. The man seemed to sense it, briefly glancing at Mu Chen. There seemed to be a strange glow flickering within his black pupils, an unsettling aura that threatened to pull one in and trap them. A slightly cold hand suddenly grasped Mu Chen's palm, its chill instantly snapping him back to clarity. His heart skipped a beat, and his eyes flashed with wariness. The Spirit Pupil Emperor was indeed mysterious. Don't focus on his eyes. Nine Nether's voice reached Mu Chen as she released his hand. The divine art he practices resides within his eyes. Mu Chen nodded slightly. As for the third one, he's known as the Sleeping King. Over the years, it seems like he's never been fully awake. Therefore, most matters of the Great Luo Heaven Domain are handled by Lord Heavenly Vulture and the Spirit Pupil Emperor, Tang Bing said, her face twisting slightly as she glanced at the perpetually drowsy figure. Mu Chen looked equally surprised, his expression reflecting the strangeness of it all. How could such a strange person exist in this world? Don't underestimate him. It said he was one of the first to follow the Domain Lord in establishing the Great Luo Heaven Domain. His strength is unfathomable, and even Lord Vulture treats him with caution, Nine Nether whispered. Mu Chen nodded gently. The three sovereigns before him were probably no weaker than the human demon elder from the Celestial Profound Hall. Their strength was likely at least above the 7th grade supreme. And what about the Domain Lord? Mu Chen asked with a hint of confusion. The Domain Lord hasn't been seen for many years, Tang Ro murmured. The Domain Lord is the most mysterious person in our Great Luo Heaven Domain. It's said he is in seclusion, but no one knows where exactly he's meditating. Mu Chen smiled helplessly. The Great Luo Heaven Domain was indeed peculiar. Nine Nether waved her jade-like hand, guiding Mu Chen and the others to a stone seat where they sat. Soon, the remaining 8 kings entered one by one and seated themselves. After all these years, the seats are finally filled, Lord Heavenly Vulture said with a faint smile, looking at the fully occupied hall. Now that everyone is here, let the 9 kings' assembly begin. The Great Luo Heaven Domain was vast and bordered several powerful forces, with constant conflicts. Disputed matters were typically settled at this 9 kings' assembly. Nine Nether, having been away from the Great Luo Heaven Domain for many years, did not interrupt the discussion, but instead tapped her delicate fingers lightly on the stone platform, her eyes slightly closed. A cold aura hung around her beautiful face. Mu Chen, Tang Bing, and Tang Ro stood in silence, observing carefully. The discussions continued for about an hour before finally coming to a close. Lord Heavenly Vulture shifted the topic, saying, now that everything has been settled, let's talk about the Great Luo Golden Pool Contest 2 months from now. As soon as he spoke, the atmosphere in the hall tensed. The king's eyes sharpened, understanding that this was the main event. After all, the Great Luo Golden Pool was a highly sought-after prize. At that moment, Nine Nether opened her beautiful eyes. Her cold gaze turned toward the Blood Hawk King, and her voice, tinged with a sharp edge, broke the silence. The people present felt a jolt in their hearts, knowing that the Nine Nether King, who had just returned, was about to take action. Blood Hawk King smiled slightly and said, Hee, Nine Nether, you've been away for a long time, so there are some things you don't know. The spot for your Nine Nether Palace has already been sold to us, Bloodhawk Hall. Tang Bing and Tang Ro's faces immediately showed anger, clearly offended by this shameless person. Sold to you? Did I agree to that? As the leader of Bloodhawk Hall, you should know that such matters are only valid if the head of the hall gives their consent, right? Nine Nether sneered. Since I didn't give my consent, then it doesn't count. However, if I offer 2,000 supreme spiritual liquids, would you sell your Bloodhawk Hall spot to Nine Nether Palace instead? Bloodhawk King's eyes twitched, his gaze turning much darker. Then he gave a cold smile. I didn't expect that after being away for a few years, you've become quite eloquent. He slowly tightened his grip on the stone chair armrest, and a mighty surge of spiritual pressure exploded from him. His eyes sharply focused on Nine Nether. Seeing this, Nine Nether curled her lips into a cold smile, her red lips curling upwards. She slammed her jade hand onto the large stone table, and a crack instantly shot out from under her palm, like a sword, aiming directly at Bloodhawk King. Audacious, Bloodhawk King, seeing Nine Nether dare to make the first move, coldly snorted. His hand also slammed down, sending a crack of blood-red light surging toward Nine Nether's crack. The two forces collided head-on. Boom. The massive stone table shook violently, but before the shockwave could fully explode, a soft power surged in, neutralizing both forces. In the council hall, no fighting is allowed. The Heavenly Vulture Emperor said faintly, waving his sleeve. Bloodhawk King snorted coldly, glaring at Nine Nether, and mockingly said, "Even if you have the spot, what does it matter? Your Nine Nether Palace no longer has a leader, so you're not qualified to participate in the Great Luo Golden Pool Contest. A leader must possess the strength of the Supreme Realm, and in Nine Nether Palace, aside from Nine Nether herself, even someone like Tang Bing had never stepped into the Supreme Realm. Who says Nine Nether Palace has no leader?" Nine Nether lifted her beautiful eyes, her red lips curling into a mocking smile. She then pointed her jade finger at the young man beside her, Mu Chun, and her cold voice echoed through the hall. "From now on, he is the new leader of our Nine Nether Palace. From now on, he is the new leader of our Nine Nether Palace." When Nine Nether's voice, tinged with coldness, echoed, the entire hall suddenly fell silent. Then, all eyes swiftly turned to the young man standing behind Nine Nether, who had remained silent and whose expression was particularly calm. Who is this person? He doesn't seem very old. With this kind of spiritual energy fluctuation, it seems he's just recently entered the Supreme Realm. Can he really take on the position of leader? Did they just find someone to fill the spot? A murmur of doubt spread quietly, and the eyes looking at Mu Chun were full of skepticism. Although having this kind of power at such a young age was impressive, the position of leader in the Great Luo Heaven Domain wasn't about talent alone. It was about actual strength. Clearly, the oppressive aura emanating from Mu Chun made it hard for people to be convinced. Xun'er King looked at Mu Chun expressionlessly, but said nothing. Behind him, a man named Su Qing stole a few more glances at Mu Chun. Bloodhawk King narrowed his eyes, staring at Mu Chun with a gaze that was as cold and venomous as a snake, scanning him up and down. He couldn't help but curl the corner of his mouth in a sneer. Who is this person? He doesn't seem to be from our Great Luo Heaven Domain. From now on, he is. As the leader of Nine Nether Palace, I naturally have the right to appoint the leader. I don't think you have any say in this matter, do you? Nine Nether said indifferently. Bloodhawk King lowered his gaze slightly and said, "Although that's what you say, Nine Nether Palace is still under the Great Luo Heaven Domain. Our domain's leaders have been forged through countless bloody battles. If you can just casually appoint someone to such a position, what does that say about the other leaders? And if the leader you appoint is weak, other forces may laugh at our Great Luo Heaven Domain for lacking capable leaders." Behind the Blood Eagle King, both Wu Tian and Chao Feng were staring at Mu Chun. The former was nonchalant, while the latter's gaze was somewhat sinister, as it reminded him of when he was brought back to the Nine Nether Palace by Nine Nether all those years ago, and was given the position of leader. However, after Nine Nether had left for many years, he ultimately abandoned the Nine Nether Palace, as a Nine Nether Palace without Nine Nether was far inferior to the Bloodhawk Hall. What he hadn't anticipated was that Nine Nether would return, and this time, she brought back a young man by her side. Is she planning to replace me with him? A cold glint flashed in Chao Feng's eyes as he gazed at Mu Chun, his expression grim, looking down on him as if assessing his strength. Compared to him, Mu Chun was still far too weak. It seems that Nine Nether's judgment has gotten worse. In the hall, the other 7 kings also nodded lightly, expressing their agreement with Blood Eagle King's words. Most of these individuals had some connection with Blood Eagle King, and it was them who had once tried to disband the Nine Nether Palace together. Seeing this, Nine Nether's beautiful eyes grew colder, though she wasn't particularly surprised. Clearly, she had anticipated that this issue wouldn't be easily resolved. At the highest positions on the 3 Lotus Thrones, the Heavenly Vulture Emperor and the Spirit Pupil Emperor remained silent, letting the others argue, while the sleeping king appeared to be half asleep, looking like nothing could wake him up, even the most pressing matters. Tang Bing and Tang Rou gritted their teeth, harboring intense hatred in their hearts for those who obstructed Nine Nether. Chen smiled slightly and took a step forward, looking at the Blood Eagle King, whose gaze was sharp enough to pierce through a person's body. He smiled and said, "I wonder what Lord Blood Eagle thinks I need to do to be qualified to become the leader?" Blood Eagle King merely glanced at Chen, leaning back on his stone chair, his eyes lowered as if he couldn't be bothered to speak, clearly not thinking Chen was worth conversing with. Indeed, he was one of the 9 kings of the Great Luo Heaven Domain, a 5th grade supreme, with powerful subordinates who could decide life and death with a snap of their fingers. If not for Chen's backing by 9 Nether, he likely would have wiped him out without a second thought, not even sparing him a glance. Blood Eagle King's dismissive attitude only made 9 Nether's coldness intensify, but Chen remained calm, still smiling. To prove you have the qualifications is simple. Behind Blood Eagle King, one of the 4 great commanders, Wu Tian, suddenly grinned and showed his white teeth, saying with a sinister smile, "You only need to defeat one of the commanders." His eyes glowed with undisguised killing intent, clearly disapproving of Chen, as he didn't like anyone getting too close to the beautiful twin sisters he favored. Chen chuckled at this, his black eyes locking onto Wu Tian's as he smiled and said, "That's indeed a good idea." As soon as his words fell, his figure moved, and he appeared in the vast hall. His gaze swept around as he asked, "Is there any commander willing to teach me a lesson?" He didn't bother with unnecessary politeness because he had already realized that such formalities were useless here. In this place, only strength held true power, otherwise, no one would take his words seriously. His courage is not small. Zhou Yu, another of the 4 great commanders behind the mountain-splitting king, raised an eyebrow but showed no intention of intervening. After all, everyone could see this was a conflict between the factions of 9 Nether and Blood Eagle King, and he belonged to the mountain-splitting king faction, so it was naturally not his place to interfere. Moreover, he didn't think highly of Blood Eagle King's faction either. The other kings watched with interest. Even those who had good relations with Blood Eagle King didn't step in. While they didn't care much about Chen, they still felt some caution toward 9 Nether, who had obviously emerged from her tribulation stronger than ever. Heh! Wu Tian grinned, revealing his sharp, white teeth like a wild beast. He looked at Chen with mockery, seemingly puzzled as to why the young man in front of him had such audacity. Although Chen had reached the supreme stage at such a young age, demonstrating his impressive talent, Wu Tian knew too well that many brilliant talents had fallen because of their arrogance, and most of them died young. Wu Tian could naturally sense that Chen had only recently entered the supreme stage. "Zhao Zhong, go check if he truly has the qualifications to become a commander," Wu Tian said with a slight tilt of his head, smiling at a man behind him. Although he wanted to personally eliminate the young man before him, he was, after all, one of the 4 great commanders, a figure of great renown in the Great Luo Heaven Domain. Acting against such a young and inexperienced boy would be beneath him. Chao Feng, standing beside him, also crossed his arms and coldly observed Chen. He did not intervene either, as his thoughts mirrored Wu Tian's. Behind them, Zhao Zhong, a man with a pale face, showed a sinister smile. He, too, was a commander under the Blood Hawk King. Although he wasn't as famous as Wu Tian or Chao Feng, he had been a 1st grade supreme for many years. His battle-hardened experience was evident in his every move, exuding a chilling killing intent. It was clear he had seen true life-and-death battles. The Blood Hawk King, who had remained silent from the beginning, seemed to have left all decision-making to Wu Tian, though his sidelong glance appeared to be waiting for a show. Zhao Zhong moved, appearing in the center of the grand hall. His gaze fixed on Chen, and a cruel smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. Over the years, he had encountered many young geniuses like Chen, many of whom had died at his hands. "Kid, I never show mercy when I fight. If you leave now, you might suffer less. Or you could join our Bloodhawk Hall, which is better than staying in that soft and weak women's palace," Zhao Zhong sneered. "This bastard is infuriating." Tang Rou's face flushed with anger upon hearing Zhao Zhong insult 9 Nether Palace. Tang Bing's expression grew colder, while 9 Nether herself remained unmoved, her beautiful eyes simply watching Chen's back. Chen's face remained calm. Upon hearing the mocking words, he merely smiled. "Summon your supreme Dharma body," Zhao Zhong licked his lips. I haven't cultivated it yet, Mu Chen replied with a smile. The people in the hall froze for a moment. Then their gazes turned strange. Was this kid foolish or arrogant? He hadn't even cultivated his supreme Dharma body, yet still dared to act so recklessly? Even Tang Bing and Tang Ro's expressions shifted slightly, clearly unaware that Mu Chen hadn't yet formed his supreme Dharma body. That's truly unfortunate, Zhao Zhong sighed. But his smile grew increasingly sinister. He stepped forward, and an overwhelming spiritual energy surged out, manifesting as a gigantic spiritual energy shadow surrounding him. Since that's the case, you'll die? Extreme cold Dharma body. A massive ice blue supreme Dharma body appeared, its chilling aura causing the air to freeze. Upon hearing that Mu Chen hadn't formed his supreme Dharma body, Zhao Zhong showed no mercy. Instead, he summoned his own Dharma body, aiming to deal the heaviest blow to Mu Chen in the shortest time possible. Though his supreme Dharma body wasn't particularly rare or ranked among the top 99, it was more than enough to deal with a kid who hadn't even formed his own supreme Dharma body. Mu Chen looked up at the massive Dharma body, his black eyes remaining calm, though beneath that calmness, there was an undercurrent of coldness. Supreme Dharma body, is it really that powerful? I'll just refine it for you, Mu Chen said, forming a seal with one hand without hesitation. A beam of spiritual light shot out from his head, and within that beam, a black light tower appeared, flickering in and out of sight. Boom! The light beam shot out from Mu Chen's head, and the black light tower emerged fully. With a change in his hand seal, the tower surged forward. As the spiritual light surged, a black pagoda silently hovered in the air. The black pagoda suspended mid-air, its ancient surface gleaming with the golden dragon patterns, which seemed to writhe, releasing a mysterious and oppressive aura. The moment the black pagoda appeared, everyone in the hall turned their attention to it. Even the Heavenly Vulture Emperor and Spirit Pupil Emperor shot surprised glances, clearly sensing that this black pagoda was no ordinary object. Zhao Zhong, upon witnessing this, let out a cold snort. A battle-hardened veteran, he had seen all kinds of situations. More importantly, his opponent in front of him was far weaker in strength. Without the supreme Dharma body, no matter what tricks he had, it was impossible for him to match Zhao Zhong. Extreme cold ice finger. Zhao Zhong stomped heavily with his foot. As his hand formed a seal, a cold, ice-like Dharma body swiftly extended a finger towards Mu Chen, pressing down with tremendous force. The frigid spiritual energy surged out, freezing the very air around them. The descending ice finger resembled a massive ice mountain looming over them. Mu Chen looked up, his black eyes flashing with a cold gleam as he gazed at the icy, overwhelming pressure coming at him. The memory of that day when Lu Ming's heavenly flame Dharma body couldn't even touch him resurfaced. Now, Zhao Zhong's supreme Dharma body was far weaker than Lu Ming's, and the thought of suppressing him was nothing more than a fool's dream. Boom! Mu Chen's foot slammed down onto the ground, causing the entire hall to tremble. Behind him, the space distorted as a vast purple sea seemed to materialize faintly. Whoosh! A colossal purple spiritual energy beam, hundreds of feet long, suddenly shot out. Like a giant serpent, it streaked through the air, clashing with the falling ice finger in a flash, colliding head-on with it. Sizzle! Sizzle! The two forces collided, creating a sharp, sizzling sound as the powerful spiritual energies clashed, each attempting to erode the other. You think you can fight my supreme Dharma body with mere spiritual energy? Zhao Zhong sneered upon seeing this. The supreme Dharma body was the most powerful battle force of a supreme-level practitioner. For Mu Chen to attempt to block it with spiritual energy was pure naivete. Freeze! His hand seals changed abruptly. Immediately, the cold energy on the ice finger surged downward like a torrent, attempting to freeze everything in its path. Burn it! A slight smile appeared at the corner of Mu Chen's lips as a flash of violet flame gleamed in his black eyes. Then, from within the purple spiritual energy clashing with the ice finger, violet flames suddenly erupted. As the violet flames emerged, the extreme cold energy was rapidly dissolved, almost visibly melting away. Even on the giant ice finger, water droplets fell, sizzling as they evaporated into nothingness. How is this possible? Zhao Zhong's expression changed drastically. The cold energy within his supreme Dharma body had been honed through the fusion of numerous cold jade pieces. Ordinary spiritual energy, when it met this force, would either freeze or be significantly slowed down. Yet here, Mu Chun had simply burned it away. Tit for tat. Now it's my turn. Mu Chun smiled, but his eyes were cold and filled with intent. He waved his sleeve, and the black pagoda soared into the sky. It expanded rapidly in the wind, growing to a towering height of 1,000 feet, before descending like lightning, enveloping Zhao Zhong's supreme Dharma body in its shadow. Roar! As the black pagoda descended, golden dragons on its surface emitted a deep, rumbling roar. Layers of golden light exploded from the pagoda, and in an instant, 5 layers of the pagoda illuminated brightly. During the Spiritual Academy Grand Competition, Mu Chun had only been able to ignite 4 layers of the pagoda when facing Lu Qingyun. But now, his strength had grown immensely, and he easily ignited 5 layers. Roar! The 5 layers of the pagoda shimmered with golden light, and 5 massive golden dragons roared as they flew out, charging into the pagoda's body and transforming into blazing golden flames that surged toward the ice-blue supreme Dharma body. The golden flames released a dangerous aura as they rushed forward. Zhao Zhong's face shifted as he saw the golden flames. He could clearly sense the overwhelming threat emanating from them. But having experienced numerous battles, he quickly took a deep breath, changed his hand seals, and saw the ice-blue glow surge on his cold Dharma body. From a distance, it looked like a giant ice crystal, exuding freezing energy. Whoosh! Just then, the golden flames rushed forward without hesitation, immediately enveloping the ice crystal giant. Sizzle! As the golden flames surged toward him, Zhao Zhong's eyes filled with shock as he realized that his supreme Dharma body was melting at an astonishing speed wherever the flames passed. The golden flames were unbelievably domineering. Damned! Zhao Zhong gritted his teeth, and behind him, the Supreme Sea appeared, its vast spiritual energy continuously flowing into his supreme Dharma body. However, no matter how much he fueled his supreme Dharma body, the golden flames continued to burn steadily, slowly, and relentlessly. Wherever the flames passed, the icy cold supreme Dharma body rapidly melted away. Zhao Zhong's face began to turn pale, and cold sweat poured out from him incessantly. In the Grand Hall, the eyes of those who had originally been watching with the intent of enjoying the spectacle began to change. The king's gazes tightened, staring at the golden flames inside the pagoda. They seemed to be somewhat startled by the power of this golden fire. This flame, at the highest lotus throne, the heavenly vulture emperor and spirit pupil emperor, whose faces had remained as calm as still waters, showed a flash of surprise. The golden flames seemed quite extraordinary. The sleeping king, who had been drowsy, seemed to slightly open his eyes at this moment. His voice was indistinct as he murmured, "Such a domineering fire." The golden flames burned through everything before them with unstoppable force. No matter how Zhao Zhong resisted, his supreme Dharma body, like an ice giant, rapidly shrank. A sharp pain surged from Zhao Zhong's body. Although he hadn't fused his main body with the supreme Dharma body, the two were closely connected, so he still felt the effects. Zhao Zhong clenched his teeth. Despite the deep sense of unease in his heart, he still refused to admit defeat. His eyes were filled with venom as he stared at Mu Chun, searching for an opportunity to retaliate. Stubborn and incorrigible, Mu Chun noticed Zhao Zhong's gaze and furrowed his brow. No longer showing any mercy, he waved his sleeve, and the golden flames suddenly surged, completely engulfing the icy supreme Dharma body. He knew that if he wanted to become the leader of the 9 Nether Palace, he needed to show his true strength. What he needed now was not pity, but intimidation. To achieve that effect, he needed to strike with thunderous force. "Burn for me." Mu Chen's palms suddenly clenched, and the golden flames blazed intensely. The supreme Dharma body, resembling an ice giant, was instantly turned into flowing water, which then dissipated into nothingness under the golden flames. Hiss hiss. Water mist spread throughout the pagoda, and the ice giant collapsed with a deafening crash. Uft. A mouthful of fresh blood violently sprayed out from Zhao Zhong's mouth, and his body was thrown back, looking utterly disheveled. His expression was one of complete defeat, and his eyes were filled with terror as he stared at Chen in front of him. He couldn't imagine that his supreme Dharma body had been completely refined by Chen. In the Grand Hall, the previous whispers abruptly stopped. The expressions of the many leaders grew serious, and even the king's eyes narrowed slightly. Although Zhao Zhong's supreme Dharma body was not particularly special, it was no simple feat to refine it completely. Moreover, the young man in front of them was still far weaker than Zhao Zhong. This young man seems to be quite formidable. The Xun'er king stared at Chen with an expressionless face, his eyes finally showing some movement as he muttered. Behind the Xun'er king, Su Qing, the leader of the 4 great commanders, looked at this scene with some surprise, lightly nodding. The battle prowess this young man had was clearly much more than what had been initially revealed. Zhao Zhong had underestimated him from the start, and now he was paying the price. Wow, Chen is actually this strong. Tang Rou exclaimed in delight, her eyes fixed on Chen's back as she cheered. She hadn't had much confidence in Chen earlier. After all, he hadn't even cultivated his supreme Dharma body yet. But now, she never expected the battle to end so quickly and decisively. Zhao Zhong not only lost fast, but even had his supreme Dharma body refined. Tang Bing's beautiful eyes also held a hint of surprise, and she gently nodded. No wonder the 9 Nether sister valued him. This guy indeed had some ability. 9 Nether didn't show much surprise, but had a charming smile appear on her cold face. Chen's move had been quite beautiful. The Bloodhawk King's gaze turned cold as he stared at Chen. Then he glanced at the defeated Zhao Zhong and said indifferently, "What a waste." There was suppressed anger in his voice. Originally, he had planned to use this opportunity to suppress Chen, so 9 Nether's plans would fail. But he hadn't expected Chen's methods to be so ruthless. Chen paid no attention and simply lifted his head, his black eyes locking onto the Bloodhawk King. The young man's posture was upright, and although he still wore his usual calm and gentle expression, there was no longer any trace of underestimating him.